Hello, and welcome back to the TMG Fireside Chat. I'm your host, John Mackey. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Mackey Group. Today, we're diving deep into the future of fire protection. I'm joined by a longtime friend, industry leader and innovator, and fellow podcast host, Drew Slocum, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of InspectPoint. In this series, Drew and I tackle the real issues shaping our industry: mergers and acquisitions, technology, the innovation gap among manufacturers, workforce challenges, and how AI is already changing the way we work. We've broken down our conversations into short, focused episodes so you can catch the insights that matter most and put them to work. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy the conversation. So let's jump right into it.
Yep.
All right. When it comes to do it and get expect a premium at the end, that's one of the building blocks you have to have in place.
Yeah.
So that's good. So let's shift gears a little bit from the M&A game to now manufacturers. You made a reference in the last section about the role of manufacturers, what's going on at the OEM level, their expectations around consolidation, and where do they fit in this game. You made a post on LinkedIn a few weeks ago around innovation, and probably more so around the lack of innovation coming from these manufacturers, from all these OEMs, big and small.
Yeah.
And yet, as an industry, we're faced with probably some of the biggest challenges we've seen with regard to fire protection needs. First and
Yeah.
foremost is on PFAS, around firefighting foams and transitioning off of that. The pressures we have on refrigerant gases, FM200 and others,
Mm-hmm.
under the AIM Act, the broad overarching umbrella around PFAS, around all things fire protection, right? And how do you continue to move the needle on
Yep.
that topic and stay ahead of it? But at the same time, you have some of the big OEMs, Tyco, Ansel, where we used to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kidde, who just went through a transaction and got acquired by a PE firm.
Yep.
The consolidation, all these moving parts and pieces are also eroding the role of the OEM, right?
Yeah.
And what's their expectation with regard to where they fit in the marketplace? How do they drive value? And for them, it's the value of their stockholders, specifically in the case of JCI Tyco,
Yep.
because they're still publicly traded.
Yep.
But what does that mean? I mean, you made a point about innovation. What is the publicly traded situation or the situation at the big OEMs done to innovation?
Well, I mean, even back when we worked at Tyco, there was innovation and there were ideas coming out of it. And even um, one of the reasons I went from Tyco to Viking back in my career was of was because of their innovation.
Absolutely.
They were making products, they were making sprinkler heads that nobody was thinking of. And it was a concealed sidewall and it was a few other things, but uh, without that innovation, it doesn't. Yeah, on the short term, it's not going to hit the annual numbers for the shareholders. But in that medium term vision, within 5 years, it should, you know, uh, promote some more sales. And if you don't have those ideas, if it's just uh, the same old sprinkler head, or what is changing extinguishers in the last 50 years, right?
High flow.
Um, yeah, high flow, right? So there, I mean, there's opportunity there. It's just I feel like the OEMs just, I don't know, they don't have a center of innovation, right? I mean, some of the fire alarms doing it, but even on the fire alarm side, it's there's some opportunity there because you could go digital, but even with that, they're having a lot of trouble. The fire alarm manufacturers are having a lot of trouble getting their dealers and their contractors to connect those panels to the cloud and the network.
Mhm.
There's no incentive for them. So there's ideas and there's things that can make everything better, but if they don't pull in those contractors, the ones that are actually, or their end users, the ones that are actually buying the equipment and getting their feedback on why they would buy more, or solving those problems, then they're just going to get I don't know, the contractors have kind of uh gone above them at this point, right?
Yep.
They're the highlight of the industry at this point of the stage. And the tech companies, honestly, too.
What's interesting, I've had similar conversations with large contractors, and obviously I've worked on both sides of the fence between contracting and manufacturing. And there are some contractors that I've said to them, they have more leverage against their OEMs than they think,
Yes.
right? What juice do you put in that bottle? What
Yep.
valve do you want in that assembly, right? What performance do you need in that sprinkler head,
Yep.
right? Because of the designs with their, because at the end of the day, the contractors are seeing these projects at the design stage before the OEMs are,
Hmm.
right? Because the contractor base has gotten closer to the customer, and unfortunately, the manufacturers have moved further away,
Yep.
right? Think of all the business development resources we had at Tyco.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we covered every vertical, right?
Yep.
And you had Tyco, sales and BD at the tip of the spear with regard to what we wanted to see in the design,
Right.
of a new warehouse facility and what that sprinkler head had to do from a performance perspective.
Yep.
Right. I remember Golenbow, I think it was a K32.
Hmm.
They had to
Way
figure out how
back.
they're going to drop water from 45 feet,
Yep. Yep.
right? Almost burned down FM in the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but to your point, Golenbow was able to do that because Tycho was still relatively small and that culture was still there. Now James the
Right.
Viking doing similar things. So,
Yeah.
um, without burning down FM. So, um,
Yeah.
so in that context, I think that the contractors have created a situation where they've got more influence on the owner and ultimately what ends up in the design. Now it's up to the OEMs to figure out what contractors they partner up with, and where you get traction. Just a market dynamic that I think's at play that was not there 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, and again, the OEMs care about install. They don't care
yeah,
about the rest of the business sometimes. Which I don't know why, because all the contractors, all they care about is the recurring revenue. Not all they care about, but it's the biggest component of their business.
right.
So,
And how do you support
um,
them? I mean, to your point, I mean, you and I've talked about this in other applications for your product and some of the OEMs to say, for example, how come we can't make a smart fire extinguisher,
yeah, yeah,
right? One of the other things you talked about in your report was the importance of fire protection data and the opportunity to collect more data. I know we just talked about in the last segment specific to manufacturers and the opportunity for data, but in the context of your industry report, what does that mean?
um, we collect a lot. We put it into inspection reports, not just us, but the service providers and contractors, right?
Yeah.
They're doing that, but what are they doing with that, right? Um, there's analytic tools that obviously we have internal, but you could take all that data, and we have the ability to do it now. You could take it and put it into, um, like a Power BI report,
Yep.
right? And run separate analytics on that same data. So, and what's more important, you have to have somebody kind of architect that. And again, we have some best practices out there, and we're always taking ideas to get better use of that data and what to do with it. But, our contractors own their data with us. Like if an OEM comes to us and wants that, you know, good luck getting that.
Yep.
It's your customer's data.
It's not yours.
It's not ours.
Yep.
So but there's a lot of power there, and that's what changes code too, right? I think NFPA has tried to do that and done an okay job with some of that, like with fire pump churn testing. They put data to the test on how the frequency of that should be, but there's a lot more. Sprinkler head testing is another one where they actually threw data against it and said, hey, we're moving dry heads from 10 years to now 15 years. And I think it's bumped up to 20 after the first test or something. So they are changing the code with that, and that data collection is important. But there is a lot of data out there. It's just somebody's got to wrangle it all in, and
Yep.
nobody's been able to do that yet.
Yeah, I mean, a great opportunity. Your platforms already has a lot of it in there.
Hmm.
but it's in so many different formats and so many different,
Yep.
definitions, if you will,
Yep.
right? And how do you clean it up and create some level of consistency? It's not like a widget you can take out of like a auto repair shop and barcode it and say, boop, put it out of the new box and put it in the car. Now you know what's
Well,
inside
the
the car.
yeah, and the other problem with that is everybody thinks digital is like once something's actual digital, it's in a workflow, right?
Yeah.
Where we're grabbing the system asset deficiency data, right? Where there's other platforms out there that are essentially is just a glorified PDF form.
Yep.
What is happening to that PDF form? Yes, that's digital, but has anything happened to that data after that? And it's almost like a band-aid. These form platforms are kind of a band-aid. They're getting the compliance done, but they're not taking full advantage of the actual data being collected out there.
Yeah. Yeah. My mind went to the life cycle, right? Think of being able to take a design BIM software and as built as you lay out and install a sprinkler system or alarm system,
Hmm.
right? And then that all those assets are then loaded into an inspection platform.
Right.
So that when your platform comes by later to inspect it, your contractor, all he
Yep.
does is pull up the location and everything's already there. Right.
That'd be great. It's as long as you own that inspection contract, right?
Right. Right. But you want to go back to the point about creating some value if you're the owner or you're
Oh yeah.
the guy, the designer,
Right.
right? And now you've got some proprietary knowledge in that design because now that paper, which once it's built, doesn't add any value other than someone looks at it later for permitting or whatever else it might be.
Right.
No,
Right.
let's make it a live document.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
We do
that should
BIM
go.
modeling. Why can't we, take that BIM model and make it a living, breathing platform?
So yeah, sell it to the building owner. Like
Yeah,
I think that's an opportunity for the architects, engineers, and developers to
absolutely.
take that data and essentially you could even make a SaaS model out of it where, it's low cost, but they have access to all their whatever, and either HVAC,
Yeah.
plumbing, fire, right at the building.
Yeah. All right. We'll save that for a rainy day. You and I'll solve that problem on a golf course. Um,
Not a rainy day on a golf course. Come on, no.
well, when we're at
Sunny day.
the, at the turn and it's raining, we have to,
Yeah, you gotta talk about something.
because we're not going to be talking about my golf game. That's for sure. We're talking about your golf game.
Ah,
All right, very cool. Well, congratulations on completing the report. I know how hard that is to get good data coming in from your any survey you run. I think you made a
mhm,
point that you had 400 responses,
mhm.
so that's great. And you said it only went out to 500, so just a really good
Yep,
response rate and engagement from your base. And again, it helps to tell the story, right?
yep,
And identify the issues that we have in the industry. Some that you knew, right? We led the conversation with labor. We know there's a need for training, but I think the bigger thing you talked about is the role. Where does digital play in this across the
mhm.
whole industry? You guys created a great platform with field service management, but there's so many other aspects to the the products and the
Yes,
market as a whole, right?
yep,
How do we do that? And ultimately, it comes around data and being able to structure the data. So,
yep.
um, kudos to you and your team for that. And that's great.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.